Since 2004, the Spaghetti Western Database has been the premier online resource for fans of the celebrated European movie genre. SWDB boasts a large collection of interviews, lists, film and home video reviews, images, and is updated daily to provide the most detailed information available. With a dedicated global community of contributors and powered by lightning-fast, easy-to-navigate MediaWiki software, everything you want to know about Spaghetti Western cinema is right at your fingertips. Visit the SWDB today, located online at www.spaghetti-western.net.
You believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. Well, you're going to meet him.
You see what fun this is? It's going to get really exciting. I know what to do now. They've made it clear.
You warriors are good. Real good. The best.
This is the end of your rotten life, you motherfucking dope pusher.
We'd make one hell of a team, Snake.
The name's Pliskin.
Welcome to another episode of 42nd Street Forever, the official podcast of Grindhouse Cinema Database. I'm Pete Roberts, and I'm here with my co-host, Sebastian Hasselbeck. Hey, Seb, how you doing?
Howdy, Pete. How are you?
We're doing good. We're hanging out, and today we have a special spaghetti western double feature that we'll be discussing, and those were shown at the Lyric Theater in September of 1970. And I'll give you a little background on the Lyric Theater. The Lyric was built in 1903 and designed by Victor Hugo Kohler. It opened on October 12, 1903, with the German romantic play Old Heidelberg. The theater was initially to have been leased to composer Reginald de Koven as home to his American School of Opera, but the school went bankrupt before the theater was completed. It ended up being leased instead to the Schubert brothers as a legitimate stage. During slow periods in the 1910s and 20s, the Schuberts subleased the Lyric Theater out to William Fox to screen movies. In 1925, the Marx Brothers appeared there on stage in The Coconuts. One of the last stage productions featured an all-black cast in Run, Little Children, which ran from March to June 1933. The Lyric ended its legitimate playhouse days in 1934, and in order to survive the Depression, it joined many other 42nd Street houses in becoming a movie theater. The Lyric remained a movie house until it closed in 1992. Then in 1996, after its remaining architectural elements were removed, it joined the neighboring Apollo Theater and being raised apart from its facades. It was later replaced by the Ford Theater for the Performing Arts, in which architectural fragments of both the Lyric and the Apollo were reused. And here's an excerpt about the theater from Bill Landis's classic Grindhouse book, The Sleazoid Express. The Lyric was smack in the center of 42nd Street, on the north side between 7th and 8th Avenues. Coming out of its doors, you'd bump into the other Deuce Grindhouses, whether you went left, right, or across the street. Looking like a doppelganger of its neighbor, the Selwyn Theater, it was one of the street's most popular venues, offering many enjoyable flourishes, a spacious lobby sporting a huge display of stills and posters, a big screen, a clear sound system, and a dramatically steep balcony with a view of the entire theater. The comfy seats were periodically reupholstered, which made the Lyric cozier than many of its neighbors. The theater combined the most popular exploitation films on the Deuce with Hollywood hits and attracted people who want to be left alone to enjoy some cheap entertainment. Young white guys and windbreakers from the boroughs, black professionals, Deuce criminals taking a break from picking pockets or conning tourists, inner city denizens wanting to escape overcrowded tenements, older people from nearby Hell's Kitchen. Nobody was looking for trouble, neither threatening nor inviting. The Lyric was the archetype of the faceless funhouse, a metronome of normalcy in a chaotic place. As with most of the better grindhouses, the Lyric had a hot dog stand in the back. The theater was air-conditioned during the summer by refrigeration, in quotes, proclaimed a hot sign hanging off the marquee, which made it a welcome relief from the sweltering street outside. But another thing I was going to say is people who aren't like real familiar with this type of grindhouse cinema history, they would probably know the movie best from the movie Taxi Driver, the theater best from the movie Taxi Driver, because that's where Travis takes Betsy on their date. Remember?
Yeah, it's a great date.
That was like the first, that's like a little, like if you're not familiar with the other stuff, you would know it from that movie. So
yeah, but also the book
idea.
you mentioned, Sleazoid Express, that's a real recommendation. I mean,
Yeah,
for whoever wants to get into grindhouse cinema, that's one of the better books, probably.
Right, exactly. So in September of 1970, Sabata was released in the United States, and that month it was playing at the Lyric on a double bill with Enzo G. Castellari's Payment in Blood from 1967, which was his first official film. And he's credited as E.G. Roland, which was common back then, as we know, like with the Americanizing the names. And Sabata was directed by Gianfranco Parolini, whose pseudonym was Frank Kramer, another Americanized version of his, original name. So that sort of connects to what we talked about in the last episode with all the crazy names, all that stuff we were talking about. Umberto Lenzi and Richard Holiday and all that. So I guess, did you want to get into Sabata and discuss that?
Yeah, let's start with that one. Mhm.
Yeah. That was directed by Gianfranco Parolini, and it was released in Italy in 1969, but it didn't come out here until 1970.
Which isn't bad. I mean, if you look at the Dollars movies, they took more than just a year to get to the US.
Yeah, like those were when did those originally come out in like 1964? But I think, and then it probably didn't come out here till like 67 or something like that. I think
probably even later. There was the copyright case with Akira Kurosawa that held it up for quite some time. But then they all came out almost at the same time. So if you were in the US at that time, you got to see a lot of those at the same time, more or less, because
there was a huge wave of spaghetti.
There was kind of a backlog, so to speak.
Right.
And since by then the whole spaghetti western had already, taken shape, there was a never-ending flood of more movies. So if you had started watching them in the early '60s, you would have seen just a couple. But if you only got into them at the later '60s, then there were already so many around that you could just see yourself crazy at the theater.
It was a whole way, and then like also like the Django movies. There was like the original Django from like 1966, but then there was like every other movie that came out had the Django name in the title, right? That was like another like phenomenon of the.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for us to imagine how the business worked back in the days, but those movies were extremely successful, and that was before the internet and everything. So one of the marketing tools that they had is just to cash in on whatever worked, and especially in Germany, they slapped the Django title onto every second spaghetti western that came out. Right. Django the so-and-so, Django and Sabata the whatever, Django hits the so-and-so, Django shoots first, Django shoots second. I don't know.
There's like 100 different titles. It's crazy.
At least, I bet. Yeah.
So with Sabata, this was probably Lee Van Cleef's, would you maybe 7th or 8th spaghetti western? I think like, if you count like the first, the dollars, or for a few dollars more was probably his first, right? That was his first one. And that was like, whatever it was, 64 or 65, I think. But this
so this came out in 67 in Italy.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry,
69.
69. Yeah. So yeah, that was sort of in the mid phase of his spaghetti western career, more or less.
He had done several, and he kind of had built a reputation at this point by as far as popularity goes. Like he kind of, where Clint Eastwood made like he did his Dollars trilogy, and he like basically went home to America. Lee Van Cleef stayed in Italy and in Spain and just kept cranking out these movies, and he kind of became like the face of the American face of the spaghetti westerns in a way, really. I think.
Yeah, I don't know what made him stay or what prevented him from returning. I mean, I'm not the Lee Van Cleef expert. Would have to ask Mike Malloy or someone. But I think from some of the stories that you read or hear is that alcoholism played a role. Maybe he got married or he got into a relationship with someone in Europe. I mean, some of the later movies he made, they were not really good.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, Sabata is, I have to say, it's in my top 10. As we were talking, we were going to do our little top 10 picks, favorite movies later on, but
yeah, and not to give anything away, but it's never been in my top 10. But rewatching it just a couple of days ago for this episode, I have to say that it has risen in my appreciation ever since the last time I've seen it.
That's good, because I think with this genre, it's like it's almost like a thing where you get an instant, maybe not an instant reaction, but you kind of know what you develop your own tastes and what you like. Like for me, like I feel like Sabata it has a little bit of everything I like about the genre. It has like a little bit of action, has like a little, that quirkiness, the spaghetti western quirkiness that we most of them have. It has like great music. It has the colorful characters. It has I just love the whole, and like the plot and the story. That's always that's part of it too. But I think it's after like you've seen that, after you've watched it a few times and the plot and stuff, you're almost watching it to hang out with the characters. It's one of those types of movies for me. Like I like Sabata, and I like Carincha. His he has his sidekicks, Carincha, Alley Cat. He's almost like sort of like a superhero-ish type character to me. Like he's one of those characters. He hangs out like on the roofs of buildings, like for some reason. It's almost like Batman or something. He's like Spider-Man or Batman or something up on the roof, like hanging out. And he has like his acrobatic, like his acrobatic skills and stuff. And then there's Banjo, who is obviously a take on harmonica from Once Upon a Time in the West. He plays his banjo, and he's kind of like an enigmatic character who kind of like comes into the the scenes every here now and then. I just like that whole. Just the whole tone of it, and the whole it's like kind of fun, comic booky, pulp, kind of like action adventure. I just like that whole tone of it.
Now, one of the things that that is important to know about Sabata is that by the time it came out, that was after the James Bond success. So one of the things that they tried, especially in marketing the movie overseas, is selling it as something of a Western version of a James Bond movie.
I see.
So they emphasized, his the trickery, the gadgets, and a bit of the plot elements where he's kind of almost like a secret agenty sort of character.
Awesome. I love that stuff. Yeah, that's awesome.
And combined with the aspects that you mentioned as where it's a combination of a lot of spaghetti western elements that we've already seen elsewhere. The mythical character,
right.
The conspiracy, the evil big shot gangster trying to buy land.
It's almost like a mixture of It's almost like a mixture of all that stuff.
Of heroes or anti-heroes. Right. And so forth, and all this together, I think that makes for a really entertaining movie. But as you said in the beginning, this is a movie that sort of has it all, but also I would argue that it walks a really fine line between being a serious movie and an almost too lighthearted movie.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, I've always saved it in my memory as a lighthearted movie, and that was one of the reasons I never really liked it so much.
You like the grittier stuff, I guess.
I like the grittier stuff, but now having rewatched it, I think this first installment, does it really well, whereas the sequels, I think they get too slapsticky.
Yeah, they get a little bit more like the second one gets a little bit too goofy. Like it's way goofier than, it's almost reaching like into the the Trinity like stuff in a way. You know what I mean? Like with those.
Yeah, and all the gadgets and the.
But I do like the third film, Adios Sabata, which as we were gonna. I think we both know it was supposed to be like an original movie, Indio Black. I think it was supposed to be called, with Yul Brenner. But like they call him Sabata, but it's not. You can tell it's not really supposed to be Sabata. But it's still a good film, like with some cool, colorful characters, like those guys with like the flamenco dancer of death, and that guy that fires like ball bearings off his shoes. I just love like all those little, And I was also going to bring up was we were fans of Robert Rodriguez, and I always wondered like if he had seen these movies and was kind of inspired for his, like those characters in Desperado, like they have all those cool like kind of gadgets and stuff, like the main character with his like guitar. With his guitar case, it like pops open, and like the Danny Trejo's character with the knives. I don't know. I just thought maybe he had seen these and like he kind of was inspired by. But who knows?
I would say so. And Austin Fisher, who's doing a video intro on the I think the Eureka edition of the Blu-ray for this movie, is of the same opinion. Like Banjo.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
El Mariachi with the guitar case. There's similarities.
Some little connections there or something, but
yeah.
Yeah, but I just love that whole, just that whole, and you were saying like, it has like the tone of it is like kind of like lighter and stuff than the other spaghetti westerns, but I think that really works. I mean, I think that, there's all different styles as we know of the spaghetti western. This was like probably more of like a lighter one, a little lighter in tone and not so like dark.
Yeah, and I think this came out in 69, so it was probably shot in early 69 or in late 68. And even though that's only 4 or 5 years into the spaghetti western, in spaghetti western years, this is already kind of a veteran effort.
Right. It's like,
So Parolini was already at a stage where they had to try something new in order to stick out. So they took the classic sets and the costumes and the action and all the things that they knew that worked, and they had to add something to it. What they added was something that he had already tried out in a different movie, in the Sartana character that he invented, or that he
was it? Yeah. Was it? If you meet Sart, or I don't know that
if
this.
you meet Sartana, pray for
Pray
a
for
death, or
death.
whatever
Yeah,
the
okay.
translation is. Yeah. And took whatever they had there that worked and combined it with what they had here.
Right.
And then what you have here is, of course, this was a Grimaldi production, so this had a big budget. So they
Right.
could really do something with it.
And you can tell actually
think
by when you can tell when you watch this movie. That's
the budget.
right. That's another thing I was going to bring up. Sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to say, when you watch this movie, like compared to other movies in the genre that are like, they're like lower budgeted, but this one almost looks like it has like a real big budget to it. It just looks like, beautifully, the cinematography is like beautiful, and like it's just, everything is like nice and like clean and like sharp. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, maybe if you compare it to the next movie we're going to talk about, it's like almost like, real high budget versus like kind of a lower budget like affair.
Yeah,
I don't
this is
know.
a really pro effort. I mean,
It's like, it
this
just
is,
really looks good too.
and Parolini, I mean, I'm not the biggest expert on Parolini, but you mentioned that he was always going by Frank Kramer, which is
Right.
something that a lot of the European directors did.
Yep.
He died in 2018, I think.
Oh, wow.
And he's not necessarily just a spaghetti western director. He did Sword and Sandals movies and Euro spy flicks.
Yep.
And this one was probably his biggest movie.
Yeah, I think so.
I would guess. He did, the Sartana movie. He did a pretty good war movie called Five for Hell.
Five for Hell. Like, I know I'm a kind of a fan of that one too. That's a kind of a fun movie too.
And then he made
Macaroni
because
Combat.
this one got so successful, he did the other two Sabata sequels.
Right.
And then I think the rest of the career, I couldn't even think of a title, so he stopped. I think he even stopped making movies at the end of the 80s.
Yeah, this is like when he was in his like prime, I guess, for those types of movies. But I always was wondering, I was trying to do some research and like find out like where the acrobatic stuff in his movies came from. That was kind of like a weird twist on, you know what I mean? Like, I never saw that in those, in other spaghetti westerns. Like, he added like that weird acrobatic, element to the, and in Five for Hell, you can see some of that. It's in, what's his name? Nick Jordan, or Aldo Canty, I think is, he's in both of he plays Alley Cat in this movie. He's in Five for Hell too, but he does like kind of like, acrobatic stunts and stuff in that one too. And it's like, I just thought that was a cool, like, element to his movies.
My guess is that, a lot of spaghetti western crews or even directors like Castellari, they came from a stuntman background.
Oh yeah.
So you would have a lot of people at your disposal who were very knowledgeable with stunts and action stuff, and they would bring probably their own ideas. So maybe you'd start out making a movie that doesn't have a lot of acrobatic stuff in it, but you would have people working for you that could do it, and then there would be, let's say, a fight sequence, and they would be like, "Oh, I can even do a backflip here if you want like me to."
That's pretty cool.
And then one
that's
thing
awesome
leads
in a
to
way.
the other. I mean, if you think of
Right.
even Terence Hill and Giuliano Gemma and a few other actors, they were really acrobatic jocks
Oh, yeah.
type folks. So they were not just actors, but they liked doing physical stuff.
Yep.
And audiences like that because,
Right.
if you imagine you're like a 12-year-old kid and you see all this jumping around, whatever, you leave the movies and you go out and play. And
That's probably where it comes from. It's like my inner 12-year-old, like, because I just love that type of stuff. I don't know. It just added it almost like added, like, I think what I'm subconsciously thinking about is it's like a comic book movie or something, like a superhero movie. So like when I see him like he like jumps off the roof and like bounces off
it's
like a
cartoon.
trampoline and like flips. I don't know. That's what I'm just thinking of for that type of stuff.
Yeah,
I
it is a
just like that.
cartoon. I mean, I personally, I don't like the Alley Cat character much. I think this is a very useless aspect of the movie, but
Okay. Well, I just think he adds kind of a cool element myself, but
yeah, it
because
is.
and also it's a
movie is
nice
sort of a
break from the
cartoon.
it's like a nice break from like the typical stuff that you get in those movies. Like, you know what I mean? It kind of adds like a little kind of a different flavor to the the story. I don't know. That was just my opinion.
Yeah, and if you combine that with, I mean, there's this, let's say, this goofiness or this cartoonishness to
Right.
it, but
Yeah.
then it's all to the backdrop of a very serious story, classic sets. There is plenty of violence. Let's not kid ourselves.
Right.
And this mix or this blend of ingredients, I think, makes the movie really interesting in a lot of ways.
Definitely. And I thought like Sabata was almost like, after I've watched it several times now, I almost thought that saw him as like a mix of Blondie and in Colonel Douglas Mortimer themselves, like almost like a mixture of them. Cause like, he's playing like the, like the, the drifter that kind of drifts into town, but then he has like that Colonel Douglas Mortimer, like kind of like the sharpshooter aspect and all that type of stuff. I just thought that was really cool. I don't know. I just thought of that. That might not be where it comes from, but. And then also Banjo, of course, is like harmonica. Like, he kind of, like what I was saying, he like comes into the frame, like starts playing his banjo, and he's kind of like
And Verga is really great in this.
a little foil for Sabata.
I would have to think if there's any better Billy Berger roles. I think he was really good in this one. He's almost underutilized.
And he's in Face to Face. I've only seen that once, but I can't really remember his character, but I think he was in that one. And he was in several other.
He was in a lot of those. Yeah.
Yep. Today We Kill, Tomorrow We Die. And then also Kioma, that one, I think.
And if we want to go back to Cleef, as you mentioned before, he did plenty of spaghetti westerns, but this is already, even for him, sort of at the end of the
run of spaghetti westerns.
of the run. He did, Day of Anger, Death Rides a Horse, Beyond the Law, The Big Gun Down, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and then aside from, let's say, The Grand Duel and Take a Hard Ride, the rest of his stuff
was like not that good.
If you like some of the Canon pictures that he did in the 80s or whatever, yeah, sure. But basically, the late 60s, that was him at the top of his game.
Right. That was kind of like the last
Last
hurrah
hurrah.
for Lee Van Cleef. But for me, like, I grew up with him like in the 80s pretty much, because that's when I was a little kid. So I didn't know really much about spaghetti westerns back then. But like I first saw him like in a TV show called The Master. He played like a ninja. That was like,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned that on another episode, but so I kind of like knew him from there. But now that I'm a big spaghetti western fan, I think I've seen almost all the spaghetti westerns at this point. Like there's a couple of them. I don't think I've seen God's Gun, but I've seen I've seen all the earlier ones. Like, and I love all those like Death Rides a Horse and Day of Anger is one of my favorites, and all those.
Yeah, God's Gun is not worth your time.
I'll skip
Unfortunately, I mean, I like them all, but
you've seen them all. You've seen them all.
Yeah, I've not seen all, but I've seen plenty. God's Gun. I mean, I would say that it's just absolutely a lesser effort.
Yeah, it's
by
just
any standard.
dull and like stupid.
For completists, of course, you need to see it.
Right.
And there's one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, is that I think the music is really great.
Oh yeah. The music definitely is one of my favorite scores for spaghetti westerns. I love it. Yeah, that's another aspect I love.
It's from
by
Marcello
Marcello.
Ciambini.
Yeah, Marcello Giambini. Yeah, it's excellent score, excellent theme song. It's one of my even the sequel has an awesome main theme, and
Yeah, they brought him back for the sequel too. And he did a few other spaghetti westerns, but he's not so extremely well known.
Well known, yeah. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite spaghetti westerns. After years of being into these movies now, it's in my top 10. I don't know. You said you kind of like it went up higher on your list this time after watching it.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, I still find it unnecessarily long, and
really, oh, okay.
Could have done well with some trimmings, but I like it a lot better now than last time I've seen it, which must have been 5 more years ago.
Yeah. That type of lighter tone.
It's almost like he's at a very self-confident place as him in that character. It's almost like he has become his spaghetti western alter ego, and now he's just basically playing himself.
Right. And like you were saying, like the whole James Bond aspect of it, like, that type of thing, like, because sometimes I'll be watching that type of stuff, and like I won't really think of, because I never like, I was too young to see these movies when they first came out. So when you were probably seeing them back then, you were still like, they were in that James Bond period where like, everything was sort of like saturated with that stuff going on. And you probably would see like a trailer and you'd be like, oh, wow, that's going to be like a James Bond spaghetti Western. I got to go see that one. But I mean, for us, we're just watching these movies. We're not thinking of all the stuff in the zeitgeist, as I was saying earlier, of what's going on. But that's just, like, and another thing is like, I love like, kind of, like I was saying, the comic book aspect of it, like that type of thing. And you've never been like a huge comic book fan, as we know. We've had several discussions about that, but that's just where I'm coming from. And then you have the things that you like about the spaghetti Western and that type of thing. But
yeah, and in the end, I think this is maybe sort of as a conclusion from my end. I think Sabata is a spaghetti Western that a lot of people can enjoy because it does have all these aspects. So wherever you're coming from, you will find something in this movie that you will like.
Right, it's like a pop spaghetti Western, I guess, is what it would be to us. You know what I mean? Like it's not. It's not like the grittier ones. It has like sort of like that pop sensibility to it, like a brighter kind of sensibility to it.
Yeah, it has a lot of mass appeal.
Right. Okay, so should we move on to our next film?
Yep. Then there's a connecting element to it too.
The next film we'll talk about is called Payment in Blood, and it was also called Renegade. Was it Renegade Riders? Something like that.
It's called Blake's Marauders.
And Renegade Riders too. I don't know. There was like a couple different alternate titles to it.
Yeah, and 7 Winchesters for a Massacre, which is basically the translation of the original title.
Oh yeah.
I think it was also called The Final Defeat. And Winchester for Hire in Australia.
Right. Yep. And Texas, 1867, and I don't know where that is. Some other country.
Brazil, I think.
Israel. Okay. But it had all those different titles. But we'll just call it Payment in Blood, which is what it was called when it played in the grindhouses here. So.
Which is interesting because Blake's Marauders is probably the most accurate. Or
that does sound more like
fitting title for the movie.
Yeah, right.
But we'll get into that.
And there was another movie called Merrill's Marauders. I think that was another West. It's probably where it was a takeoff on that. But anyways, but so this movie was directed by Enzo G. Castellari, and this was his first film, I think, right? Pretty much the first credited film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's one of our
one he's
favorites.
credited for. I think he made movies before, but he never got
credited
because he started out as a stunt coordinator or something.
Right. But he's one of our favorite genre directors. He would go on to become one of our favorite genre directors. Like after he made several movies. He made like Spaghetti West. He was another director that did all types of different genres. Like, and actually a lot of those directors did. A lot of the Italian directors worked in all different genres. Like they do like peplum. They do a few spy films. It's basically whatever was popular like during those years, and the 60s and early 70s. And
yeah, they were. I mean, most of them were under contract at Italian studios, and of course they made their mark in the whatever genre was the successful genre at the time.
Right. And then he went on to do like the Polizios, and he did like all those, and then he did like in his most famous film for people that aren't like into these types of movies, they know the film Inglourious Bastards, not the Tarantino film, but his was the original one from 1978, and that's like that's one of his most famous films.
And which is almost like a spaghetti Western taking place during the war.
Right, it's the same idea, but it's like a Dirty Dozen spaghetti Western, basically. Like with that.
And for those looking for a Polizio recommendation, he made High Crime with Franco Nero, which is also an excellent representation of that genre.
And I finally saw that after our last episode. I watched that movie, and I was like, that has one of the craziest man getting hit by cars scenes I've ever seen in any movie. It was just crazy. I was like, whoa. It was like, that must have been, I mean, it had to be a dummy to see that guy get hit by the car. It was just crazy. Like, it was just like so like violent and like just insane. But
and
anyway.
that's sort of what he's become known for. He's an action director. So his movies are action movies.
Right. But if we're talking about Payment in Blood or whatever, Blake's Marauders or Renegade Riders, I think like if before talking about like the plot and all that stuff, we can go over that a little bit. But I think like it's not a perfect film, and it's not like one of my favorite spaghetti westerns or anything. But you can see the beginnings of Enzo's style in this movie. Like you can definitely see like it's sort of like, you know, it's kind of all over the place, but like you can see like in scenes, like his action scenes and stuff, you can, and like the style of it, you can see like the beginnings of like what would come later on, and like he would kind of fine tune everything. That's what I thought about after I watched this movie.
Yeah, for the most part, they tried, they tried out what they could do with a few early ones. Let's say Corbucci, he did a number of early ones that are not so well known until he went on to do
Django, probably.
until he like found his style and,
Yeah.
and his voice. And same with Castellari. For the later part of his spaghetti western and war movie career, most of his movies are kind of mission movies. They're adventures. They're action-rich adventures, and you can see this sort of here, but it's not as pronounced as in, let's say, Kill Them All and Come Back Alone, which is almost like a man on a mission.
Yeah, I love that one. That's actually my
movie.
favorite. One of my favorites of his is that one with Chuck Connors, and that's sort of like a Dirty Dozen type movie, basically.
Exactly.
Like those characters. Yeah, I like that one a lot. That's a good one. That's probably the first. I think that's the only other one I saw by him as far as the spaghetti westerns go.
Well, you may have seen Kioma.
Yeah, I've seen Kioma. Yeah, I did see Kioma. That's
And
the
then
one with
there's
such weird, the weird like score with that guy singing like that weird.
It's a very late entry in the
Such a
genre,
strange-
but also one that's also quite popular or was popular in the US is Any Gun Can Play,
Oh yeah, I probably might have seen that
with
too.
I think Gilbert
Once years ago.
Roland.
Yeah, I think I probably saw that once years ago, but I remember like Kill 'Em All and Come Back Alone the most out of like all of those. But this one starred Ed Kookie Byrnes, and he was actually one of the actors that like inspired Rick Dalton. Not to go back into like, you know, the Tarantino verse again, but that's just to put it in context. Like that's like where he like his career was sort of like similar to Rick Dalton. So this was like his spaghetti western time, like when he was like he started out and he was like in the 50s, and he played like all different like teenager type roles, and then he was on 77 Sunset Strip. That was like his big like popular role and like on TV, and he was like kind of like a teen heartthrob. And then a few years later, he started doing like the spaghetti westerns, and he did those for a while. And then, you know, his career kind of like took a weird twists and turns. But like growing up, like I first knew of him from the movie Grease, because he plays like a Dick Clark type guy in that movie. And like I didn't know who he was back then. That was like when I was a little kid, so I had no idea like who Ed Kookie Byrnes was. But you know, this is just for a little background on like who he was.
Yeah, same. The name meant
You know, I didn't
nothing to
know-
me until I
Yeah, I
saw
didn't
this
know
movie.
So it's like, you know, but I mean, in this movie, like when you watch this movie, what the first thing I thought of like after I watched it was it's sort of like a mixture of like for a few dollars more and like that type of thing. It has like that, like, you know, the guy that's the guy that joins up with like a gang of like killers, and like, you know, what is he doing there? Does he have ulterior motives or what? You know, like that type of thing. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, but but in the end, it's even more than that. It's
Right.
I would say it falls into the subgenre of spaghetti westerns that not only is it one of those post-Civil War type ones,
Yeah.
but it falls into the very distinct undercover agent
Oh,
job
yeah, yeah,
kind
right.
of story. And
Right,
without
that's what
giving
it
too
is.
much away, that's sort of what this movie is about. It's like who can you trust, who has which kind of motive,
Right.
and there's a bunch of twists and turns and backstabbing and betrayal maybe, or is there something else going on? You don't know until the end as the audience. But that's sort of and we see that in I want to say at least 10 or 15 other spaghetti westerns that follow later, or that this one's even following in the footsteps, and is this sort of infiltration type.
Yeah, I like that
story
type of story
element.
too.
Yeah.
I definitely like that. And the co-star of the movie is Ennio Girolami, and it's what I found
It's
out
his
was
brother.
Enzo's Castellari's brother is Ennio Girolami. So that was kind of cool.
Because Castellari is his mom's last name, and
Oh, really?
he usually
Okay.
goes by Enzo G Castellari, and the G
Right.
stands for Girolami.
Girolami. Okay, so that was kind of a cool little thing.
Yeah.
And who's the main bad guy? Is it Guy Madison? Is that
Yeah,
who?
he plays the titular Colonel Blake. I like him.
Blake. Yeah, he's good.
He
But
doesn't have too much screen time here, but
right.
yeah.
But like I was saying, like I was comparing this movie to it. Just this is what I was comparing it to for a few dollars more, and I was taking Ed Burns's character Stewart as Joe or Blondie, whatever you want to call him, Clint Eastwood. I'll just call him Clint Eastwood. Taking him and then putting him in with El Indio's gang, John Maria Volante's gang. He kind of there's a little bit of that. It's like it's a different story, as you were saying. It has like a different, the undercover agent type thing. But it has actually he's sort of a bounty hunter in that in what do you call it, right? For a few dollars more. Because at the end he basically does take all those guys and like to collect the bounty at the end, right? So
And
he
he
is a bounty hunter in that movie.
And weren't
so
there
it's
like
sort of the similar
stories
idea.
or
Yeah.
theories that even the
Yeah.
man with no name was actually a government agent or something? I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
like, but anyway, so it's like connecting to this movie. Like I'm seeing Ed Burns as Clint Eastwood's character going into El Indio's gang, or whatever his name is, Blake, the ex-Confederate guy, Blake, who's supposed to be crazy, and we know that El Indio was a Looney Tune. When you watch that movie, he's a total nutcase. So it's like that similar thing going on. But when the difference is Blake definitely isn't as crazy as El Indio. He has a reputation as being crazy, but when you watch it, it's like he's not really that crazy. He's a little bit, but it's just I was kind of comparing them back and forth while watching.
And it's not he's not pathologically crazy. It's more
No, it's
like he's a bit overly violent and impulsive,
Yeah.
but also he's kind of delusional,
Yeah.
and that works really well because this, as I said, this is one of those post-Civil War type films, and one of the
Confederate.
alt titles is Blake's Marauders. So there's all these like post-Civil War type gang movies with ex-Confed soldiers that don't really want the war to be over, and
Right.
you see this in a lot of U.S. westerns as well. This
What it
mode of-
reminds me of now that you brought that up is Outlaw Josie Wales with the Civil War, the Union soldiers, the Redlegs. And they're a bunch of marauders that go around like burning down like houses and stuff, and like raping women. Like that's like just part of that genre, I guess. That post Civil War genre, or Civil War anyways, Civil War genre.
Yeah, so this was a popular subgenre even before the Italians touched it, basically.
Right. But as far as like the movie goes, I thought it was a good film. Overall, it was just sort of like it just not as good as like it could have been. But there's this, and I really like the score in there by
The score is
Francesco De
great.
Masi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things in the movie is the score. It's one of those things where I'm looking for anything. But there was one part towards the end where it's like almost like a Sam Peckinpah like shootout in the town, and I was like, this is like reminding me of the Wild Bunch, and this came up before the Wild Bunch, so it was almost like without the slow motion, but a similar like setup. If you watched both movies, you'd be like, oh wow, that does remind me of that.
And
That's just something that I saw.
It's good that you mentioned it because, as we said earlier, Castellari was an action director, and I think there's some moments in this one where even though it feels, kind of, it has a lot of rough edges and probably didn't have the biggest budget, but there's some scenes in there where you can see that they really made the most out of it, and they had ambition to make something that really stood out, and shootouts are one of them. But also I think the script is pretty smart. It's not the most original story, of course, as we just mentioned, but it's a pretty smart script. And also I do like the fact that it doesn't center too much on the bad guy, as Sabata did, for example. I mean, Colonel Blake does barely have, 15 minutes of screen time. Probably he's more like a shadow in the background that looms over the thing.
Oh wow, yeah. I guess
And
I
it's
didn't
more
think
about,
of that, but
how Stuart rescues Chamako, and then infiltrates the whole gang, and so on and so forth. It's more about that than really the
Blake
villains.
himself, or like he's sort of like just like he's in there, but he's not like the main the focus of the thing going on. There's all this other stuff going on around.
Exactly,
him all
the
time.
villain is not being rubbed into our face, and I think that makes it interesting. Even though I think Byrnes is not the most That doesn't have that great screen presence or anything.
He that's the thing I was going to say about him is like he's sort of like mediocre as far as like the he doesn't have like the same like a Clint Eastwood type person, and he's just kind of like going through the motions of like of the role, like talking to the guy, giving him like a little smile, like kind of trying to be like kind of like a rebel looking like James Dean type character a little bit, but he doesn't have like a real strong like personality or anything, which is like that's kind of, you have to have that like special like he's not like a Lee Van Cleef type guy or anything like that, or
No, absolutely not.
he doesn't have like the, or even
But I do have to say that, I mean, having just rewatched it also for this, I mean, it's kind of a shame that there's no restored HD version of this, because I do think that it would actually gain in appreciation if more folks were to see the movie closer to how it must have looked, rather than some
I think so too.
some old DVD. I mean, the DVDs of this one that are available, they're all not of the greatest quality.
The print
there's
I watched
there's more to
blurry.
this movie, I guess, than a lot of people see, and I think once it may come out on Blu-ray or something, when it's all a cleaned up picture and uncut, and maybe the sound's better, and you can watch it on a big screen or on your projector or something. Its qualities may shine again.
Yeah, I mean this, because the print I watched of the movie was pretty like blurry and kind of just wasn't very good, but I'd like to see it in like a nice, highly restored version, just to
because it does affect our appreciation and our way of how we look at the movie.
Right.
It's even though it's unconscious probably, but if you can't really appreciate the camera work and maybe the colors and the lighting,
not getting
the
full extent of what the director's vision really is, what it is at the end of the day. So you have to. But overall,
it is a pretty good spaghetti western, I think.
I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty solid, but
it does have its lighter moments, but it's not nearly as lighthearted as Sabata, I think.
Yeah, it's a little darker. It's definitely darker than that movie, but I definitely I would recommend both movies to people. Like just as a spaghetti western fan, I think they're both good films that represent the genre very well. And
they do make a good double feature.
Yeah, it is. And also, it's interesting. I was doing just a little research into this movie, Payment in Blood, when it played in the Grindhouses. And in another movie it played with on the Deuce was Corruption. This other movie that I liked, this Peter Cushing horror movie, and that was another kind of like a popular double feature that was always playing back then. So that was kind of interesting to find out. We're talking in Grindhouse, the Grindhouse era of those movies. So,
yeah, this could have easily also been a U.S. Western with, let's say, Audie Murphy instead of Kookie or whatever. Yeah.
Kookie. Ed Kookie Byrnes. He was good. Yeah, I mean, definitely, check both of those movies. We recommend both of those films, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not stinkers.
Okay, should we move on to our spaghetti western top 10 we were going to do?
All right. Okay. So I don't even know your top 10. I mean, they're probably online somewhere too. So are mine. But I'm curious to see how far apart we will be or not.
I have to say, like, looking at mine, like, I thought it was going to be like really like eclectic and like different. But a lot of these are pretty to me, they're like the mainstream ones in a way. I mean, but those are the ones I like the most, and there's several by the same director on there too. But those are just the ones I like the most right now. But I mean, maybe like 5 years ago it'd be a totally different list. I don't know. Probably would be, but lesser known stuff. I don't know.
And a lot of folks are like that, and that's why on the Spaghetti Western database we don't only have the top 20 where everybody lists their most popular ones, but also we do the alternative top 20,
right? And you
which is the top 20 of titles minus those that are on the top 20, which is also really interesting exercise to do. Is like, how would the top 20 look like if we were to subtract the top 20 and
the most popular
do the
ones.
Exercise over again?
Yeah. So mine is like pretty, it's all the ones on my list are known at this, they're pretty well known, but that's just the way I like what I like. So
Okay, you do the first five, and then
I figured, what if we do like start from 10 and then go down to 1 or something like that? Wouldn't that be good? I don't know.
oh yeah, we do a countdown. That sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so who goes to first? Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my number 10 movie is Navajo Joe from 1966, directed by Sergio Corbucci and starring Burt Reynolds.
Oh wow, that
You wanna
didn't
go?
even make my top 20
Oh, really? It didn't make your top 20? Holy
for
crap.
some reason.
Holy
I'm looking
crap.
at it right now. I can't
Okay.
believe it
I don't know if
myself.
you like. Do you want to? We probably don't have time to like talk about all these. Well, we just should just
It's
go
in my
through these.
alternative top 20.
Okay. All right. Do you want to do yours next?
So my number 10 is God Forgives We Don't, which is
Okay.
also not only the first Terence Hill but Spencer spaghetti western, but also the first of the Colizzi spaghetti westerns, of which there are 3. The other ones being Ace High and Boot Hill.
And I think wasn't that released in America by American International? I think.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd have to
I don't know.
check, but it's possible.
Okay. My number 9 movie is They Call Me Trinity, starring Terence Hill, directed by Enzo Barboni. I think.
Yeah,
I
or
just love- I
E.B.
just-
Klucher. E.B. Klucher is his
Yeah,
AKA.
E.B. Klucher is the other name, but I think like it's funny. Those are probably the first spaghetti westerns I ever saw. The Trinity movies and the Sergio Leone movies. So they hold like a special place in my mind as far as like being like a growing up and seeing those. Like I always like thought of spaghetti westerns as having like that kind of like before I like grew up and like actually researched them and knew about what they were all about. They always had like kind of like a little bit of humor to them too. You know what I mean? So that was one of my favorites. So.
I don't even know which ones I saw first, but it was probably the Trinity movies because as a kid, that was the only stuff that played on TV in the afternoon.
Yep, that's the same with me.
So my number 9 is Companeros
Okay.
by Corbucci.
One of my favorites too. Okay, my number 8 is The Great Silence, another Sergio Corbucci movie from 1968. Starring how do you say his name? Jean-Louis Trignatin. I can never say his last name.
I think it's Trintignol, but my French is also a
Trintignol.
bit rusty.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. I just think that's one of the best spaghetti westerns of all time is The Great Silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So my number 8 is A Fistful of Dollars.
Oh, cool.
It's
my all-time favorites.
It's a bit further down on the list, but out of the dollar movies, it's the one I don't hold that high in regard. So it's only number 8.
So you split yours up. I did mine. I put them all together as one thing, as one, counting as one place on the list. But anyways, that's what I did. So
yeah, I can do a few footnotes to make up for that. But yeah.
Okay.
So what's your number 7?
Number 7 is a movie I just saw recently. It was on another podcast. They discussed it. If you know the movie, you'll know what podcast I'm talking about. But it's Sonny and Jed, another Sergio. I have like a lot of Sergio Corbucci on my list for some reason. It's one of my favorites with Thomas Milian and Susan George.
I've never seen that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites now, and those are 2 of my favorite actors of like the 70s, like genre films. That's my other.
Yeah, Susan George is great.
Yep. And
so my number 7 is Django.
Okay.
Here we go, another Corbucci.
Okay, and my next pick is Django from 1966, another Sergio Corbucci movie. I don't know. I just these are all my favorites right now. So I love that one.
Yeah, and my number 6 is The Mercenary, another Corbucci, and
Yeah,
probably
a lot
my
of-
favorite. Not only my favorite, not only one of my favorite spaghetti westerns, but also one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites too. Awesome. I didn't put it on this list though because I had some other. I could have put it on probably as instead of Navajo Joe, that would have been on there. But anyways, I definitely appreciate that one. I definitely like that one a lot. Okay, my next pick is Day of Anger from 1960. I think it's 1967,
Mm-hmm.
and directed by Tonino Valeri, with another Lee Van Cleef movie.
Mm-hmm.
One of my
I
favorites.
don't think it's. Let me see. I don't have it on my top 20. I think.
Really? It's not even on your top 20, really?
For some
Holy
reason.
crap!
Yeah,
Damn.
it's a curious list, I have to
Holy
say.
got
Also,
some
anyways,
weird
but
picks.
I can continue with Lee because my number 5 is The Big Gun Down.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites. Okay, my next pick is My Name is Nobody, and that's basically another Tonino Valeri movie from 1973, and that's Henry Fonda and Terrence Hill. Another movie that's sort of like a Trinity, like kind of comedy, like a mixture of like comedy and drama. It's one of my favorites.
With Leone's fingerprints all over it.
Yep. And he
Okay, so-
directed some of it, didn't he? I think.
Yeah, there's some disagreement of how much really, but Valeri
Some of
was
the
sort his
sequences.
protege, so
Yeah, I think maybe like that Funhouse sequence or something they said he did or something like that. I don't know.
probably.
The mirrors, like the something like that.
So I'm at my number 4, and that's The Great Silence.
Oh, cool. That's one of my favorites, as we know. Okay, my next pick is The Big Gun Down, and that's directed by Sergio Solima from 1966, another Lee Van Cleef film. And I wrote a review of it.
It's one of the big Sergios.
Yeah, and then I wrote a review of it on your site.
That's true. I remember.
Okay.
That brings me to my number 2, and that's now it's gonna be controversial because there's among spaghetti western fans they fall into 2 camps, whether you pick the one or the other as your number 1. So my number 2 is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh wow, that's definitely one of my all-time favorites. I'd put it like at number 1, but it's good enough. It's fine. Okay, my next pick is Sabata, and we just discussed that.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorites.
So you combined your Sergios, right?
Yeah,
or
I did.
your Leones. So obviously my number 1 is Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. But I did combine the Dollars trilogy as my number 1. I figured that would just
okay, that's what you did. Okay.
whatever. Just because they're like they're so popular all together all the time. So I just figured I'd combine them and just keep
Right.
it as one trilogy of one.
What are
place.
some of your what would you say are some of your less obvious follow-ups to your top 10?
Less obvious follow-ups? Let's see. Like Death Rides a Horse would be one. Kill 'Em All and Come Back Alone is a good one I like.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think about directors and what. Yeah, I've seen so many of those. I kind of like the Blind Man or not Blind Man, but the Get Mean with Tony Anthony. So like some of those.
Yeah.
I like the Tony Anthony ones.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I forgot to
I've
mention
seen so
earlier
many, they all
that I have actually met Enzo Castellari once.
You met him? Oh yeah. Did you interview him or something? I can't remember.
It wasn't an interview. It just shook his hand and his
Oh.
son's. But
Oh, cool. His
But
son.
his son was there too. I don't know what his son's doing.
What was this
but-
at like some like movie screening or something?
No, this was on the set of Inglourious Bastards.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot you went to that. You saw it. You went there. That was cool.
Unfortunately, there were some videos in the last couple months of where Castellari was also in attendance of some event in Rome, and he does not look good.
really?
I think he might because he looked like an old guy. He was really well in shape, and we all know the pictures of him, gray hair, but healthy
Right.
and strong or whatever. But I think he's starting to look really frail.
Oh wow. He's one of the greats though of that.
Absolutely.
Of that.
I want to point out 2 that I see on my follow-ups that I want to recommend because, as you mentioned, I like the grittier types.
Yeah. Yep.
So my number 14 is And God Said to Cain with Klaus
yeah.
Kinski, which is a really dark one. It's almost like a gothic type situation. And my 19 is Forgotten Pistolero, and that is one hell of a movie.
I don't think I've seen that one, but Forgotten.
Great soundtrack, very biblical type story. Yeah, that's pretty
I'm
cool.
trying to think of some other ones that I like just before we like move on to the.
Do you have Cemetery Without Crosses on yours?
No, I don't have that one, but I know there's other ones I like, but
Bullet for the
Yeah.
General, maybe.
Bullet for the General, but I liked Requiescant. Is that how you say it? Requiescant. That was good. And then there was one of the other ones. What is that? Crap, I can't think of it. It's if you shoot. It's today we live, tomorrow we die, or something. One of those.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah.
I got mixed up on those some of those titles, but yeah. But I mean, there's other ones too. But like I liked his name was King. That was kind of a good one. I like that one with Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, also him. Yeah. The Klaus.
Yeah, that crazy Klaus.
Yeah, he was crazy.
He was a Looney Tune. Okay, I guess that'll wrap up our spaghetti western top 10 favorites.
Yeah, and of course, if you go to the if you're listening and you want to learn more, you can go to the Spaghetti Western database, and we have a bunch of top tens. We have
there's
Tarantino's
tons of
top
stuff.
10 and
And you got so many
the
Blu-rays
other
now.
ones, and you can dig deeper into the lesser known spheres of the Spaghetti Western once you've watched yourself through the more popular ones.
Onto the Blu-ray section, our Blu-ray picks for this episode. Whoever you want to go first on these, or
I can. So I don't want to make it too overcomplicated because most folks can look at the calendar, but I want to point out two titles that I think will be especially interesting for English-speaking audiences, let's say. So for one, in November, there will be a US release of the Spaghetti Western with Ernest Borgnine called A Bullet for Sandoval. Yep. And from all the info we have, it might actually include a remastered prints of both the US theatrical version as well as the uncut longer version. So that should be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And in December, the next bigger box set by Arrow Video will come out. And the special ingredient here is the little seen but much awaited Robert Woods Western El Puro. So that's what got the fans excited, and those are two. If you're if you're looking for, I want to call them stocking stuffers because that's probably a little bit too much dough for a stocking stuffer, but definitely these would be good gifts for spaghetti western fans around the holiday season.
And
that's for spaghetti western,
right? And since we did Sabata, didn't they release like someone released the box set or the trilogy of the Sabata films? I think recently.
That can be had. That's a UK edition from Eureka.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's easy to get. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd recommend that if if you're a fan of those movies, that's something.
And in North America, they were released individually by Kino Lorber, and I think that aside from the extras, they're probably the same prints that were used.
All right. So is that you got your picks that you got, or okay?
At least on the spaghetti western side of things. Yep.
Yep. So for my one of my first Blu-ray picks, I picked The Pack, which is from 1977, and it's like a Nature Strikes Back movie, basically like dogs, attacking everybody, like a pack of dogs are terrorizing this this town, and Joe Don Baker is the star of it, and it's from 1977 and directed by Robert Klaus, who also directed Enter the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw that for the first time recently, and I just really liked it. I thought that would be a good one for fans of those types of movies, and especially for this month because it's horror month, so people are going to be watching all those movies.
Shocktober,
right? And then My Bloody Valentine, which we discussed on another episode, is coming out on 4K Blu-ray this month. So that's another pick I would do for Shocktober, or whatever you want to call it. And actually in the UK they're releasing Arrow is releasing Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, and that's in a 4K edition. So that would be a good one to get if you're a fan.
Sweet.
And then for another horror pick, Dario Argento's Tenebrae is on 4K from Synapse Films this month. So that's another good one.
That's an excellent one.
That's another one of his best horror films. And I recently reviewed The Prodigal Son, Sammo Hung's kung fu film from I think it was 1981 or 1980, and that was excellent. You recommended that one, and I got a copy of it, reviewed it, and I really
remember
liked
the first time I watched that, I was just awestruck because the fight sequences are just a marvel.
It's top of the line, kung fu, Wing Chun, I think it is. Wing Chun Kung Fu. Yeah,
it's just fists and kicks and stuff. It's just crazy. Nothing fancy, but it's really very little cutting and editing and just a lot of choreography.
And especially the last fight is one of my all-time favorite kung fu fights in that cinema, in that type of cinema. Awesome. And let's see what else is on the schedule here. See, even though it's funny, we don't think of Duel as Duel isn't really an exploitation film, but it's like we can consider it a cult classic now, and that's like Steven Spielberg's. It was originally a TV movie, but then over in Europe, I think they released it as like an actual movie over there. So, but that's one of the ones that's coming out in November on 4K Ultra HD, and that's another pick I would like kind of recommend to people because that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
It might have been, a drive-in flick in a different universe.
It probably was back, but I don't know if they released it like because over here it was like a TV movie, like a made-for-TV movie. So I don't think they might have at some point released it as a movie. I don't think so. That maybe though. I don't know. I know overseas they did though. But it's like you could watch it as that. You could like put it on a double bill with like some other car movie, like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. I don't know, something like that, or just watch it as like a kind of like a car chase type movie.
Have you seen the car?
Yeah, you could actually watch it with the car. That would be a good one.
I think that's probably. I mean, the car is.
It's sort of like a horror, like
a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's like it's like the demon possessed car, but it's like just that theme of like being chased or whatever, running people over and stuff.
The car is like death proof without.
Without like a real person behind the wheel. Yeah, that's the type of thing.
Right. I have. I think I have 2 or 3 picks also from the Grindhouse catalog here.
Oh yeah, I have to before I leave. The Warriors is coming out in 4K from Arrow Video. That's that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah, that'll be a good one. And then
true.
Let's see, and then also 2 Burt Reynolds Hicksploitation classics. The Gator McCluskey double feature, White Lightning and Gator. Those are coming to Blu-ray. I think they were already. I don't know if they were already out, but anyways, they're going to be back out.
From what I've seen, those are reissues, but they have better encoding than the first time they came out. That if you have the other ones already, you're probably not going to notice much difference. But
oh yeah, and here's one more pick: the Sonny Chiba Collection, Volume 2. So if you're a Sonny Chiba fan, you should definitely pick that up. If you have Volume 1, you got to have Volume 2. So get that one too.
For sure.
Yep. So I guess that should do it for me. I don't.
Okay. I was really bad this year buying exploitation flicks because I have stacks of discs here that I haven't watched. But had I gone shopping, these would have been my July titles. That would have been Arrow Video's Bruce Lee at Golden Harvest box set.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's definitely.
And the other one, Severance, The Central World of Black Emmanuel box set, which sounds amazing. It's like, I don't know, it's like 20 movies in there.
That's an epic box set for sure. It's so like such a niche thing, like to have like Emmanuel, like a whole box set.
Yeah, that's a lot of Laura.
I mean, it's like, but kudos to them for doing that. I mean,
Yeah, and the other one that I wanted to point out for sure is in August, Grindhouse put out William Shatner in Impulse.
Oh yeah, I actually just watched that like a few months ago, like not in like the new version, like the Blu-ray one, but just like an older, kind of a bad quality one. But it's just a crazy movie. It's like if you're a William Shatner fan, you definitely should pick that one up. The Grindhouse Releasing always puts out good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All the titles by Grindhouse Releasing should be no-brainers.
Right.
And in September, I thought it was interesting. Blue Underground put out a Ultra HD version of The Girl from Rio.
Oh yeah,
which is I would say it's a camp classic. They had put it out before many years ago in a double feature with The Girl from Sumeru, I think it was called.
Oh yeah, it's Jess Franco movies.
So I'm waiting for the other one to also come out in 4K. I'm not sure if that's something you need to have or see in 4K, but it's definitely, as you said, it's an absolute niche treatment, and it's quite a thing to see these flicks getting that sort of quality treatment.
I'm trying to find like some good ones. Actually, like if you're like really into like the old like sci-fi, like 50s sci-fi movies, The Terror from Beyond Space is now on Blu-ray in an updated version. Mm-hmm. That's like a classic. That's a good one.
And another one that I wouldn't normally put into like a grindhousey corner is Frankenheimer's The Challenge, which also came out comes out this month, I think.
Yeah, that's sort of like, it's semi-grindhousey. It's like, it's sort of like a samurai like type action.
It's a nice crossover,
Yeah.
genre crossover
It's
thing.
one of those
yeah.
movies.
And then
From
if
the
you're
early-
from France, if you're listening and you're from France, there's plenty of Polizios coming out in France this
yeah.
month, next month.
Yeah, there's tons of those. I was looking at those on the site, and there's like tons of those covers, all those different.
And also, I think there's another 1 or 2 Shaw Brothers box sets coming out.
Actually,
from-
actually, there's like
Severin?
I think so. But actually, let's see. There's I think it's like Shout Factory has
Oh, Shout Factory.
like 10 different box sets of Shaw Brothers movies coming out, all on Blu-ray. So it's like, just take a look at the list. You can see them. You can see them all.
It's a great time to be a collector.
Yeah,
That's
there's
for
like
sure.
Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5. I don't know. There's like tons of them, but if you're a fan of those movies, you can definitely pick all those up too. And so that's about all I got for my list.
Actually, on a different note, one of the last grindhousey type things that I watched, which are also on the list here, because it comes out as Luigi Cozzi's Contamination, which is a really really shitty alien ripoff.
Oh yeah.
But if you like to
you were
torment
saying.
yourself and bore yourself to death, then that's also a recommendation.
If you want to contaminate your brain with that crap, then go ahead and watch it.
No, it's not bad. It's just really it's kind of lousy.
It's just like been done better, basically, is what it is.
Yeah.
Something. Okay. So is that the end of the?
That should wrap
Episode.
it up. Yep.
That's the end of our episode 13.
The Spaghetti Western double feature.
The spaghetti, and we both recommend those movies too, Sabata and Payment in Blood. And I'm sure that was a good double feature to see at the Lyric. Don't go see Swedish sex manuals like Travis Bickle. Go see Sabata and Payment in Blood.
And don't take your girlfriend.
Don't take your girlfriend to a porno on the first date. Take her to a spaghetti western double feature on the first date.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. That's how we recommend it. This is Pete Roberts.
And the Seb.
This has been 42nd Street Forever, and we'll see you next time. Have a great one.
Amico, c'è Sabata. I chiuso.